Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Finstep Minute Stake, the fintech minute stake that talks to the top fintechs in Hong Kong and beyond who are with us, talking about changes in the industry but also the future. Today we are with Florian Spiegl, one of the OGs and founders of fintech in Hong Kong, including having built and exited fintechs and now building something very exciting with Evident. Florian, how are you today?
I'm very good, and thanks for the kind introduction.
Thanks for joining us today. We've seen fintech evolve in Hong Kong over the last 7-8 years. What are your thoughts of fintech 2024 in Hong Kong?
I think the first thing to mention is we went through some hard times. We can say that. Everybody did, but especially in Hong Kong. And so 24 for me has been a year already now where we see all these things coming back. People coming back, optimism coming back, business coming back. So here at AFF, the same atmosphere in that direction.
And what is Evident doing? What's the exciting element that you're doing? We can see the captions, but tell us more from your words.
So we're an investment platform for alternative assets, and we leverage tokenization to digitalize assets, automate processes, and in this way make alternative assets more accessible to more investors.
You're missing something about what Evident has, which not too many fintechs do, right? Which is something I always feel many fintechs do not look at, which is in the regulated space. You recently got your
license.
Yes. Do you want to tell a little bit more about how the process was and what were the lessons of why you went for a license?
Well, it's an occupational hazard from your side to ask that question, but thank you for that. We are the first licensed platform that has a fully integrated tokenization service in Hong Kong. So we work with issuers who want to digitalize assets that can be a fund, it can be a standalone single asset, and then we help them distribute that to investors. And for that, of course, from the beginning, it was clear we want and we need a license. Now, from a Hong Kong perspective, I think Hong Kong is really leading the pack in terms of top-tier financial markets that offer a licensing framework for companies like us. Having said that, part of that framework is to have a very high standard. So the process, of course, wasn't easy. It took time. We answered a lot of questions, but that's how it should be. And we're very glad that we went through this process. And as you may have seen, my friend, on LinkedIn, I posted on my birthday, we got our license end of December. And so now we're ready this year to really scale on the distribution front and bring these amazing assets to more investors.
Yeah, it was a Merry Christmas. Now you're going to the Year of the Dragon with a license to ride on top of that, right? What would be, if you had to pick 3 lessons that you would recommend or suggest to aspiring founders who are looking at getting a license as you did with the SFC? What are the 3 key things to keep in mind?
Well, number one for me is realize that it's a big commitment and take your time with that decision. What is the right jurisdiction? Where do you want to be set up? What does the process entail? You have to be totally committed to it. It takes time and resources to make it happen, and it's a long-term planning. The second thing is form a partnership and close relationship with the regulators. In our case, the regulators really wanted to understand what we're doing. And you have to have the patience to explain, to make things transparent and easy to understand. That I think really helped us. And the third thing is just don't give up, right? Have the tenacity and answer all those questions and re-answer them as many times as it takes, because that is the reality of, I think, licensing in any proper jurisdiction.
Now, coming back to Evident, as it were, right? What are you looking to do in the coming year, and what kind of people, companies, organizations should be contacting you?
Well, so we've done actually quite well with our pilots and POCs, and we actually have a full pipeline of assets that great and high quality issuers want to tokenize. So on the asset supply side, we're actually doing super well, including at this event. So this year for us will be the other side of the marketplace, which is distribution. So we're forming partnerships with distribution partners, so B2B2C type of approach, where we enable these partners to bring alternative assets to their investors. And that's what 2024 is all about for us as Evident, but especially for me as the founder, form these partnerships, these relationships on an international basis, where we offer amazing assets in a licensed setup globally.
Perfect. Thank you again for speaking to FinTech Minute Stake. We look forward to staying in touch and showcasing your growth towards the later part of the year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to FinTech Minutes Take. Today we are with one of the older fintechs in Hong Kong who came from TradFi and tried to change and are changing the way finance and credit is done. We are with Anindita Ghosh, co-founder and CEO of Credence, formerly known as Interlinkages. We're going to hear the data story from them and how they managed to get EBITDA positive in a very tough environment in a world of fintech where everybody's struggling on revenues. Anindita, welcome to the FinTech Minutes Take.
Thank you, Musheer.
How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you.
How's AFF been so far? What's been the exciting things you've seen at the start of the year?
I think when you are in a company of so many startups, you end up seeing the world of innovations, and you are in same boat with a few of them. So there's a lot of energy about the place, and of course the other thing is networking and finding the right business opportunities. So it has been good for us.
You did the pitch previously. I'm not going to ask you for a 3-minute pitch, but would love to hear the data story and about Credence for our audience.
Sure. For cross-border trade of $21 trillion, we have more than 330 million companies and more than 20,000 financial institutions in the form of banks, insurance, reinsurance interact with each other to support this cross-border trade. The requirement for real-time information is that much more urgent. Both from a perspective of to manage credit risks, in terms of performance and payment risk and other types of currency and other risks, but also for the corporates to increase the market, find new counterparties, do procurement. And the beauty of this is 99.9% of these companies are actually private, so you don't get public data on that. So how do you make this public data infrastructure across the world real time? That's a challenge for the business.
And so how do you solve it?
We have done proprietary technology through which we are able to integrate with public sources and derive meaningful value through the earlier shipment records and traditional credit risk analysis, combine the two and come out with our own scoring model, which help the banks and corporates decide on the risk levels and computer analysis and finding just the right counterparty for them.
Look, you guys have been running a very tight shop, as it were, yourself, your co-founders, Divya and others, and you're very generous with all the support you provide with other co-founders, including for Finstep. And I know you guys are moving towards profitability, revenue, EBITDA positive. What has been that secret sauce to move towards profitability, especially in a very tough environment, given how COVID and others impacted the trade finance and the credit story?
I think first one was the pivot. So, once COVID started and, the transactional volume sort of decreased in the other trade finance market, we pivoted very fast as our customers, which were primarily banks, were asking for more risk-related support rather than transactional banking support. So I think one of the things that really helped us was that we heard our customers and then put heart and soul into creating a product which they were looking for at that time. And thankfully, once you create a product for the worst of times, it typically does well in slightly better times. And I guess the story for us has been, we are both EBITDA and PAT positives, and ARRs going into 6 now today. The best part for us has been, the faster turnaround times, understanding the market, and creating a product which the banks, their credit, the regulatory environment loves today.
So what can we expect from the Credence data story in 2024? What are your 3 top aims or targets for this year?
I think increase the number of countries where we are selling reports. So we are looking at Middle Eastern, Indian and other Asian corridors where we have existing relationships through our ecosystem. Number 2 is make this product available across the world through our e-commerce channel, e-commerce platform that we are developing. And third is, the entire proprietary side. We want to create this automated AI ML model, which will help us in understanding the data far better, correlating the data and creating nodal values which are potentially beneficial in understanding for the long term. So we are going for product development and market expansion as we speak, along with increased profitability.
Looking forward to hearing more from you towards the end of the year, especially the way your AI ML model improve and showcasing 2 other fintechs about reaching profitability if things are done the right way. Thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to speaking soon.
Thank you so much, Musheer.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the FinTech Minute Stake. We are here at the Asia Financial Forum. We're going to be talking to Mark Francis, co-founder and CEO of Zetl. We've been doing very interesting things in the FinTech space where they're building solutions, flexible solutions for startups and SMEs in APAC. A lot of good growth in the last few years. So we're going to talk about that. But first, Mark, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, mate. Thank you so much for having us on here. Look, it's been a pretty good event so far. I think that there's been a pretty good audience. I think yesterday we were also interviewed on TV, which is great. So look, after 3 years of being locked down, it's nice to actually just have events again, right? And sort of get that energy back in Hong Kong.
Yeah, you're on TV, now you're on the small TV, as you like to call it.
It's going to your
the
audience.
Micro world. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about Zetl and your journey in the last 3 years.
Sure. So Zetl started 5 years ago. When we first began, we were a direct-to-business lender, right? So B2B lending. Channel partners would pass us companies to finance, and then we would onboard them, do the underwriting and finance in that way. What's happening now, and it has been happening for about 1.5 years, is we've been going down the embedded lending route. And what that means is we're integrating directly now with payments processors, POS vendors, online marketplaces, getting access to their transaction data, training our credit model, and then offering pre-approved financing to their merchants, right? The beauty of that is you can get access to hundreds, if not possibly thousands of merchants with one partner, whereas the traditional model, which is, to honestly, quite hard to scale. So that's going to be the big development for us over the last 2 years.
You know, like regulations, I think, matter a lot in this space, right? Open banking, open data. HKMA has been doing quite a bit of work on that. You have the CDI, the Central Data Interface, coming up. How do you see that playing a role, not just for yourself, but the ecosystem?
Yeah, so look, I mean, in Hong Kong, we come under the moneylenders ordinance here. Singapore, it's actually an exempt activity, B2B financing. Australia is also the same. In the Philippines, we actually have a banking license that we use to lend compliantly. And in Malaysia, we're actually acquiring a license ourselves. So we need to stay on top of what's been going on. Look, the open banking initiatives has been huge for us because with open banking API integrations, we're able to get access to bank statement data in real time, which obviously helps us to come up with more accurate credit underwriting decisions. So that's been a big part of it. And I think the other thing is more the technology developments that have followed on from that. Things such as e-direct debit authorizations or e-gyros in Singapore. You know, these obviously have a big impact, and also things like virtual collection accounts as well, right? So in terms of regulations, we don't see a huge amount affecting us at the exact moment, but the key thing is every market we expand into has its own regulatory environment. So I think for us, the challenge is to make sure that we stay on top of all of the local legislation and regulations so that we obviously follow everything compliantly.
So if you were to, you've been founder for a while now, 5 years, as you mentioned, managed to get through COVID.
Yes.
As people may think, there's a lot of credit that people needed, but it's actually very tough underwriting that,
yes.
right? And you've gotten through that. So what are the lessons you would say, pick 3 key lessons other founders in the credit space can learn from Zetl and yourselves? What did you experience?
Sure. I think, look, the first thing is that the lending is hard. That is, without a doubt, lending is difficult to do, particularly after 3 years of COVID and then the financial markets as they've been in the last 1.5 years. So I think for us, we've learned how to have a very robust credit underwriting methodology. You need to have something that is clear-cut, that's scalable, that is, can be replicated across all of the companies you're underwriting. So I think that's obviously one, is having something that is standardized and obviously showing that it works. 2, technology, without a doubt. We are small, but we are nimble, we're agile. And what that means is we're able to integrate with a bunch of different partners through API layer, which allows us to really punch above our weight, right? Versus traditional banks and even some of the bigger lenders out on the street. So I think trying to innovate is also important, and through technology is a key part of it. And I guess the third part of that is also making sure that you've got the access to the right markets, right? The origination strategy, do you have something that's scalable? Do you work with the right partners? Because there's a couple of other lenders that have had access, and it's a lot of success with fundraising, but then the issue is deploying that, right? And actually being able to deploy those funds. So we've kind of always had a lot of origination. It's the right problem to have, is like too much demand and then trying to fix the supply, the financing side of it. So I would say make sure that you've got a very clear origination funnel so that as you are fundraising through your journey, there's no issues in deploying and scaling your business.
So the last question is, what can we expect from Zetl for 2024?
Sure. So we've got these embedded pilots up and running now in Hong Kong, one in Malaysia going live, there should be one in the Philippines next month. We're currently in early stages with the companies in Australia and more in Hong Kong and Singapore. Expect to see Zetl partnering with more of these payments processors and POS vendors over the next few months. And then also the plan is by the end of the year that we're going to be live in Japan and possibly also Thailand and Vietnam. So the idea is we'll be a true regional player. Beauty is you don't have to localize, right? The localization is done by the partner. They're the ones that have the UI design for those partners. For us, it's about integrating with them on the back end. So actually, it allows you to scale regionally much quicker, which, as we all know in Asia, is very different to Europe and the US, where there's one big homogenized market. It doesn't work that way in Asia. So I think that's sort of where you should expect to see us. So yeah, hopefully you'll be seeing the Zetl name more commonly over the next few months.
I'm sure we will, and I look forward to seeing the progress in this year. Thanks again for speaking to us, and stay in touch.
Thanks for your time, mate.
Welcome back to FinTech Minute Stake. Today we are talking to one of the OG fintechs of Hong Kong who came in from Ireland, set up here, Claus, Christensen, who is the founder and CEO of Know Your Customer, done a lot of work in facilitating major change in financial services, working with both fintechs and financial services firm. I'll not talk too much about it, but I will let Claus handle this. Claus, how are you doing today?
Hi, Musheer. Thanks very much for having me on. Very good. I'm here at the AFF 2024, and to me, 2024 alone sounds like future, doesn't it? And being here expresses that.
How are things with KYC, as I call it, right? Know Your Customer. What have you been doing in the last 3 to 5 years, especially emerging through COVID and out of COVID?
3 to 5 years, man, that is like an entire world. For 8 years, I ran 8 different companies because every year had completely different challenges. A lot has happened in the, let's say, last 3 years here for KYC. As you can imagine, in this space of regulatory compliance and compliance technology for large banks, the challenge is really to gain the trust of the financial players out there in the industry, banks, large institutions that are much older, much longer in the business. And that took a while. But 3 years ago, things really started rolling for us. And so we finally got the first financial institution large enough to qualify as a tier 1 here in Hong Kong. So I'm very glad for setting up our operations. Founding 8 years ago here in Hong Kong, but also our first tier 1 was here, not somewhere else. We were the right choice. After that, a few more institutions came. So first one, Standard Chartered, American Express, Hang Seng Bank, OCBC, Zetl, and Power Bank, the virtual banking space. And we went over to Singapore and did start there as well. Aspire, the virtual bank, a really good customer of us. Payment space, Pioneer numbers, and finally DBS. So we're now embedded in quite a few institutions. We concentrate on one thing, that is business entity verification, not the KYC of individuals as you might think if you see our networks. And that has been a roller coaster ride as any startup is, but it's also really rewarding to get that learning experience. So Musheer, you've seen it.
Yeah, I have. Like it's been a tremendous growth to see you guys grow, and been very resilient in that market. But also, it's been good to see the regulations evolve, right? Both here in Hong Kong with what started smart banking into virtual banking, and then progressing into Singapore and other places. I want to ask you with regards to, as a founder and CEO of a company, what have been the 3 key lessons you've learned over the last 3 years, right? That you want to share with other founders in how to be this resilient and come through on the other side of a tough business environment?
Well, founder CEO is an interesting job. I would say, I haven't prepared for this, but I would say one of the most important things is to be absolutely resilient. Like that is the one thing you cannot flunk out of this. You have to stay on the game. And there's a deep commitment necessary. Or else you will be shaken out at some point because it is a roller coaster. But like more to the point, every founder has areas where they're good at, areas where they don't know so much about. And your job as a founder is to find the right people, and also to put the right attention to each area after you discover things there, learn more. And in any way, learning, I'd say that's number one. Learning is number one priority for everyone and every CEO, because it changes so much.
So Claus, what are your plans for 2024?
Well, this is an interesting year for KYC. In many ways, 2023 was successful, but also difficult for the companies. As you know, the funding situation globally has been very, very difficult. And so it's not as easy to access growth funding. And so we decided not to and do this organically, which meant we had to be profitable. And we are. So from this basis now, it gets really, really interesting. As we scale up our means and can invest more in marketing and sales, we scale up our operations. Currently, our best markets are Hong Kong and Singapore. From here, we go into Southeast Asia. There's several countries very, very interesting. Don't want to completely commit at this time, but interesting developments in the Philippines, interesting development in Thailand. We'll see where all that goes. And of course, we will scale up into more financial institutions. There's still a lot to do. We just got elected into the CDI, the Commercial Data Interchange of HKMA, the regulator here, which is a super important step, but it will mean a ton of work working with financial systems here to connect them all to this data. By now, we have 142 countries connected to our system, not just jurisdictions, real countries, and that means we'll invest more in that, stabilize the whole thing, and really get to the limit like the system. Want to do 2024 and also prepare bigger jumps as to the US, but that's later in the year.
Okay, exciting. Looking forward to your scale and growth. And we'll touch base later in the year to see how things have gone and hearing more better things for 2025. Thanks again for featuring in FinTech Minute Take, and we look forward to staying in touch.
Musheer, thanks for having me on.